Hi, I'm Jim Brett, President and CEO of the New England Council. Thanks for tuning in to this month's episode of Inside the Corner Office, where we catch up with the leaders of some of our region's most well-respected businesses and organizations to learn more about their career paths and about the institutions they lead. This month, our guest is Eric Slifka, the President and CEO of Global Partners, an energy distribution company headquarters right here in Massachusetts that serves wholesale, commercial, and retail customers. Eric shared the family's own company's incredible history from its founding by his grandfather some 90 years ago to its continued growth in the 21st century. Eric and I also had a great conversation about the historic transformation underway in the energy industry and how his company is adapting and evolving to continue to serve its customers while also working towards clean energy goals. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Eric, it's great to meet you, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, Jim, it's great to meet you as well, and I really appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you and going back and forth. I think we're in an incredible period in our industry and in the economy, and so I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you about it.
Right. You know, we always start these conversations learning more about our guests and how they got to where they are. So let's start there. And you really have spent your entire professional career at Global Partners, from your first job painting the tanks in Revere to working your way up to the various roles, then becoming the CEO in 2005. Can you share a little more about your career path and how long your history with the company has shaped your leadership style?
Yeah, look, it's quite unusual, but I think the one thing that's different here is this is a family business. Even though we are a public company and it's a master limited partnership, it was a company that was founded by my grandfather, and he had one truck in Dorchester, and my grandmother, who had multiple sclerosis, did the books for him, but he drove the truck, and back then you were delivering K1 kerosene, 5-gallon pails up the steps, and then my dad went into the business in the 50s and started buying out companies. And I came in 87, and my uncle also started in the business in the late 60s as well. And unusual part of the story, my dad gave my uncle, his brother, half of the business in the late 60s when he came in, because he was his brother and he was his partner and he was his friend, life friend, right? So, unusual things, and hopefully we've been able to accomplish some of that family history and continue on with it today. But in terms of my experience, I knew I wanted to be in the business. I as a kid, as soon as I got my driver's license, we had a terminal in Revere, Mass, and I spent my summers working down at that terminal. But I was also fortunate because, I had my dad as a mentor. And, the first business, international business we did was in Venezuela. I actually got my passport as a teenager to go there. And he started bringing me down on trips with him to Venezuela, where we were buying cargoes of oil from them. So I was very fortunate that I had a great mentor who really took me all along the way with him. And I went to BC. I graduated in 87. Little story, I took a business class there. My dad said to me, we had bought our first gasoline terminal. And he said to me, Eric, I'm having trouble making money on wholesale gasoline. And, I just don't, we can make it on the heating oil. We just don't seem to be able to figure it out on gasoline. And I had a professor there, Professor Dunn, and I did a study on how to basically try to vertically integrate the company and so not only have terminals, but also have gas stations and integrate our business model to actually give us a little bit of more margin all along the way. And I remember coming into the company, and we were getting all the tax rolls, and this is when it was really manual, right? So you get all the companies, all the company names, all the tax rolls, and then they sort of became targets for us. And today we now not only own a bunch of terminals, almost 50 of them, but we also supply 1,700 gas stations as well, and we're sort of deep in that business. And it's really played out the way that business class and that business paper had sort of led us to believe.
What was the price of a gallon gasoline back then?
So this is a great story. I come here, we have a head trader, okay, and the head trader literally had a piece of paper, was his price book, handwritten, 1 and 2 cents a gallon. It was more by the time I came in, but he had it would be 1 cent in the summer, okay, and then the majors would tell you what the price was, and it was 2 cents in the winter. Right?
Wow.
Crazy, right?
That
Wholesale, crazy.
Wow. You are actually our first guest on Inside the Corner Office who leads a family, founded and run business, as you just mentioned. And I know that your grandfather, needless to say, started the company, I think, some 90 years ago. Can you just walk us through, the company's history and how it came to be the company we all know today?
Yeah. So, I think, my grandfather really started the business. We always joke. I say, I don't know how he afforded that truck in 1933, right? Because those were tough times, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about the Depression. It was really difficult, and a physically demanding job as well, because you're carrying pails, 5-gallon pails up apartment room steps of K1 kerosene, and it was just a very tough business. But I think, when my dad went into the 50s in the business, he was really focused on acquiring other businesses. And the folklore is he's driving down a street in Dorchester, and there's, and the snow's piled up high on either side of the road, and you've got cars parked on either side of the road. The truck can barely fit through. My dad always said he was a terrible driver, smashing into cars as he's driving down the street. But there was an oil truck parked in front of him, and he gets out of the truck, and the guy's delivering oil to the house, and he starts talking to the guy. And that night they go to the lawyer's house and they sign the papers, and he bought his first retail home heating oil company. And we sort of did that over and over and over again. And it became one of the largest retail home heating oil companies in the 70s. And then in 79, he sold that business, but he now bought a terminal. And that terminal allowed him to buy energy in bulk, store it, and then wholesale it to smaller distributors like he once was. And then he went into the supply and the trading business, and he started doing business in Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, and then we started to expand from there. I mean, so I would say, to me, he did an incredible job of sort of leading the company to do many, many different things. And obviously the world was much less efficient. You could barely get phone lines out of some of these countries. And so it really, that really put us into a position for expansion. And financial risk ends up becoming a really key part of the business. And this is where my dad and uncle would break together. So when it was super inefficient, it was very easy to buy and make money and feel what the market was, and actually then deliver good P&L. But then as those margins began to shrink, as more companies came into the business, the risks were higher. And if you didn't recognize that you had to hedge, it was a problem. And my uncle and I, at the time, I was literally doing, I've done just about every job in the company, right. But I was doing mark to markets on 8x14 green IE sheets. Okay. and so we figured out how to manage our risk. And really, I did that with my uncle, but it was he who sort of led the way on that. And so, I think that actually, even though it was tough, it actually is what kept us in business during the margin shrink period of time, because now we actually had good controls on the business. And then I always had a perspective too, just being around the business enough to say, I think we should pay somebody else to take risk if we can't move the product out quick enough because the hedges, didn't quite work right in certain businesses. And so we were able to take like residual fuel, which goes into commercial and industrial business, and we would pay our suppliers a little bit longer, right? Like have them price it out over more days, and so we didn't have the risk on the inventory. And those sort of things helped us along the way. And then we were able to really consolidate, the terminals and buy a bunch of businesses and really integrate our business model to really put us in the position that we're in today. Right?
With so many members of the family in the business, did you ever have an occasion where you had a real split on a decision that somebody was about to make?
Of course, right? I mean, yeah. that is just natural. I would say, so this is another sort of interesting personal family story. Mm-hmm. My dad was 8 years older than my uncle, his brother, right? Yeah,
right.
And, and his brother mostly found a way to work with him. And so he wasn't, I wouldn't say deferential, but he allowed my dad to lead and to do things. And then if my dad got in trouble, his brother helped to bail him out. Right? I mean, that's the truth, right? So, but it's good teamwork, and that's the way it goes. And and then you find a way, right? And obviously having me as the next generation come in, that can create some difficulties too. And I'd like to say that it was not only, let's say, my uncle who allowed me to do the things that I did. Mm-hmm. But I think it was also in part my ability to zig and zag and let go of things and just try to move forward and focus on what I thought was important. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I was very fortunate as third generation to have the support from, obviously not just my dad, but my uncle as well, which not easy, might not be so easy.
Right. Is there another generation coming behind you?
So my son just started in the business, and he's 28 years old, but he came out of real estate and real estate development. Yeah. And so, one of the things is we have 1,700 gas stations that we supply. Right. We probably own around 475 properties in total with real estate. So we're part real estate company as well. And as this fuel transition takes place, and as higher and better utilization of assets really take hold, we're going to look at what can we do with the assets that we have to maximize our returns. And an example, I'd buy a terminal and it was on the water, and I'd say, how wrong can I be? Right? If all goes to hell in a handbasket, what's going to happen? I got 20 acres and it's on the water. And that's always like a little bit of a fallback position, right? So, bringing him in and bringing that expertise in, it'll take us in a somewhat different direction. One of the recent deals we just completed was with the Davis companies. We purchased in partnership with them the Exxon Mobil Everett facility, and that's 100 acres. It's going to be a big development. We have a premier partner in that. And we're really looking forward to stepping out and doing something different there.
How does Global continue to perform well in the market, despite all the volatility stemming from the variety of factors? I mean, we see the international conflicts almost every day now and the pandemic. How are you able to keep focused in that market?
Yeah, I mean, we if we carry our inventories, we run a hedged book. But at its most fundamental base, we're an infrastructure company, and we're providing goods and services to our guests and our customers, whether that's at our retail gas stations that we operate or that we supply, or whether that's our terminaling, wholesale, and supply business. Right? These are needs and requirements that people have every day. And so that base fundamental business is really there. But I will tell you that one of my most interesting business experiences has been over the last couple of years, where we had COVID come in, literally our demand dropped by 50% on our the retail station side of our business. The home heating oil side, it went up a little bit because people were now staying at home. But what happened was prices dropped. Our margins allowed us to make plenty of money because they completely changed, even though half of the business was gone on gasoline. So that's one example of a low price, low demand environment of the business performing, right? Fast forward to a couple of years after that, you have the Ukraine war. Products are extremely, extremely tight. You know, and we really have a great team of people here. And we rejiggered how we hedged and how we managed our inventories in our business. And we were able to perform in that market the best in the history of the company. And so I would say a little of that goes to that it's a base infrastructure company, but it also goes to the people here in the organization who are open to thinking different, recognizing risks and changes in business, and then figuring out how to maneuver and operate as those changes happen, right? And so whether it's a hurricane or whether it's a war or whether it's a pandemic, you know, if you look at our results, we've been able to actually perform in each one of those examples and actually deliver not only to our customer base, but also to our unit holders who own the company.
So how much of that 50% pre-COVID has come back?
Not all of it, I would say probably somewhere around 90%, you know, maybe 98%. I'm not sorry, 92%, right? Somewhere around there. Look, I think there'll be pressure on volumes as there's a transition to electric or to different fuels. You know, that being said, if you have the best assets, the most convenient assets in the marketplace, those are going to be the winners as the business either consolidates or as others go out of business. So I think we're positioned well, even in sort of a market where you're having declining demand. I think we're in a position where we can execute because of our asset base.
You know, the industry is in the midst of a historic transformation as we transition to more clean and renewable energy sources. So as a company that's deeply rooted in fuels, how do you see the company evolving and adapting to keep pace with these major industry shifts?
Yeah. So, you know, when we talked earlier, we talked about my grandfather, and we talked about the fuels that he was delivering, and that was whether it was K1 kerosene or whether it was even coal. You know, those were the fuels that he delivered, you know, and today those fuels are different. They're different in that they're either blended with biofuel or it's renewable diesel. And so there are different products that we're handling and that we're embracing, and those products all have lower carbon footprints. And so I think people generally want to do good by the environment. Nothing is for free, and that's something we've got to make sure that we're, you know, in business, that we're very focused on. But it is an efficient way to lower your carbon footprint because these are drop-in fuels. Right. So it's not like you have to go in and rip out your heating system or gas system and put in electrical and spend $30,000 or more to do that. You can use your existing infrastructure that you have today, blend in these biofuels into it. The emissions at blend rates of 20% or more are actually lower than even natural gas. So there is a pathway here, I think, to do that is not just electric. And I would say it's really incumbent upon everybody in the community to embrace the fuels that are going to lower carbon footprints today as we go to this transition of electric. If that's our future, and government scientists feel like that is the best way to zero out our carbon footprint, you know, I really believe there's a period of time where that's going to you're going to have to get in every basement and pull out a system. That's going to take a long time. It's going to be very expensive. So what can we do today to help solve the problem. Those are the types of things that we can do. Electric charging at gas stations or at fueling stations. Look, that is another role that we're going to play. We have, as I said, some of the most convenient assets that we own or we lease. And I think those are going to be the places where people go to fuel up, whether that fuel is electric, bio, whether that is gasoline, renewable diesel, or old diesel fuel. So there is a process here. I think, we're prepared to embrace that. We're putting in electric stations today. We've probably got about 10 throughout the system that we've built. We started that journey, about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe permitting 7 years ago. And I do think that market's maturing to the point where it's beginning to pay for those kind of investments. So I think that's going to happen, and we can be supportive of it and make it, and make a dent sort of in emissions. The other thing that I would say is critical here is government's role in this transition. And the government has been, the federal government in particular, has been very supportive of making sure that there are funds available to change our terminaling assets. So now we have 50 terminals. The 50 terminals and storage tanks go from the state of Maine all the way down to Florida and across to Texas. But taking that base infrastructure and making sure that it can handle the biofuels of today, the renewable diesel, the sustainable aviation fuels, and making sure that we can deliver that to the market is really critical. That takes investment, and there are federal funds that allow you to do that. We've, over the last probably 5 years, we've probably pulled out somewhere like about $10 million in federal government subsidies to invest in our terminal facilities to make sure that we can blend those fuels of the future.
You mentioned that you recently acquired some 25 liquid energy terminals, doubling your footprint throughout that whole eastern U.S. Can you tell us more about this expansion, how it will impact on your ability to serve your customers?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly expands our ability and our capacity, but it also diversifies the company because we were very strong regionally in the Northeast. This now puts us down the Atlantic coast into the Southeast and into Texas, and it really broadens our footprint. These were assets that were owned by a company that is named Motiva. Motiva is owned by Saudi Aramco. It's a big deal for us because it really doubles our terminal network, but we think there's an opportunity here to really focus on these assets and drive additional value that sometimes larger companies just aren't focused on doing. That doesn't mean that the assets aren't well run and they're not focused for what their business is today. But look, this is going to be our livelihood. We're gonna dig out every piece of value that we can from every single asset, and whether that takes a capital investment or permitting or trying to do something different with the assets to build them out to carry different fuels or to be supplied differently, we're going to investigate every means to drive value through these new terminals. So we're very excited about it. We think there's a lot of upside.
Right. Most gas stations across the country also have a retail store attached, but most people don't associate these outlets with healthy food options. And that's something that GP is working to change. Tell us more about this Alltown Fresh brand and the growth you see for this retailer going forward.
Yeah, so we've sort of taken a different look. I can tell you personally, I didn't want to just build a marketplace, convenient location with fuel that carried all the same things that everybody else carries. I wanted to make sure that we differentiated ourselves in the marketplace by carrying better for you, healthier options. We also have kitchens in these Alltown Fresh locations where it's made to order, right? So you go in there, you can go right on the app, and you can order on the app and have it made exactly how you want it, and have it delivered curbside, or walk into the facility. It's interesting. I think there's a preconceived notion of, you know, what a convenience marketplace looks like, or a C-store. And Alltown Fresh, we've totally reimagined what that looks like. So to any of your listeners, I tell them, go in, visit. I can promise you it will be a very different experience than anything you've had, you know, in this convenience space. It's expensive to build these things, but I really think we have a differentiated offering. And we also, on the fueling side, it's gasoline, it's diesel fuel, it's electric charging stations. So it's really trying to service anybody who's on the sort of on-road community that is truly looking for convenience.
And it's a great initiative.
Yeah.
I know that GP is committed to giving back to the communities it serves. And in 2023, you launched that global Good to Unite philanthropic and fundraising and volunteering efforts. Tell us more about some of the causes the company supports and why they are so important to you.
Yeah, I mean, being a family from Boston from the 30s and being really involved in the community, you know, giving back has been a pillar of what the family does, and now what the business does, right? And so it's about trying to take sort of the value that we can create as this ever-growing company is, and really raise funds, right, for those in need, right? And the focus is really giving back to the communities that we serve, you know, between the family and the company. You know, we've certainly given away tens of millions of dollars over the years or more. It is part of who we are. It is one of our core values, but it's also very personal to us as well. And one of the examples is, you know, my grandmother, who's doing the books, she couldn't do the books anymore because she had MS. And so my Uncle Richie was the chair of the MS Society at one point. But that is also something that personally is very important to us. I have a nephew who has cystic fibrosis. That's another charity that is very important to us. But whether it's that or something that's more community-based, that's where we're focused on delivering as well.
Well, more companies should be doing what you're doing, and you should be congratulated.
Thank you.
Well, given the New England Council's focus is on federal policy advocacy, we always like to wrap up these conversations talking about federal priorities. So to that end, what is your wish list for Congress? Do you have any policies or programs that you would like instituted or continued in the new year?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're doing a very good job of supporting businesses that are trying to do, you know, essentially execute on lower carbon solutions. And whether that's the Inflation Reduction Act and funding the build out of electrical vehicle charging stations, or whether that's a higher blend incentive program that supports taking these liquid energy terminals and actually making sure that they can handle those liquid fuels of the future. You know, they've been there to support that. You know, I would say, but at the state and the federal level, I like to call this, you know, the government is really trying to do another moonshot, and it's moonshot in energy. And so that transition is going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to take a lot of money. And so the issue really is, how do we transition as we're going to make that decade-long change? It's going to take decades to get there. And so let's make sure that we're supportive of an all of the above approach, and that we're using anything and everything that can in fact help to lower our carbon footprint. And that's some of the things that we're trying to do as well, right? And so reaching out not only at the federal level, but it's very important at the state level too, because the state level is really where all these changes get affected, right? And so the states have to either come together or have similar type programs to make sure that it's still being done in an efficient way, that can try to really cap out and keep the costs as low as possible. Because I am worried about the cost over time of some of these investments. And so all of the above, we've got to be open to it. We've got to let new technology win the day, and not just pick winners and losers.
You know, we're now in the midst of the cold New England winter months, where I think we all realize far too many of our region's neighbors are struggling to keep the heat on. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the federal LIHEAP, the Low Income Heating Assistance Program, and what you'd like to see Congress do in terms of funding going forward?
Yeah, I mean, they've got to be there to support it. I think, you know, we've been involved in LIHEAP literally over the decades in business. We've been supporters. We go up to Capitol Hill. We try to get the money for LIHEAP. I mean, there are those that are less fortunate that need help. We've got to find a way to do it efficiently and effectively. LIHEAP program actually is a great program, and it is done very effectively. Last year, we had donated over $2 million to the New England states and New York to support those in need. Every year, we support the cities and towns that we're in, and we give them the oil and the funds to make sure that they can deliver to the homeowners that are in need. So, it's a difficult issue, but it's the right thing to do. We like to try to put our money where our mouth is. Back in the days, Citizens Energy used to bring cargoes in from Venezuela. We were their partners on that, right? And we worked, we worked with Joe to make sure that energy would go to the people that were most in need, right? And I'm worried about it because I do believe there are more need than ever, and we've got to make sure that those funds are there, and we're willing to participate in whatever way we can to help, as we have in the past, and as we will in the future.
LIHEAP's been an issue that New England Council has adopted years ago in advocating and supporting each and every year, because it's a quality of life issue for so many people, whether they're in, Bristol, Rhode Island, or in Bangor, Maine. It's just a quality of life issue. And I always thought it was important for the business community to step up to the plate and urge Congress not only to continue, but unfortunately, need is so great to increase the funding.
Yeah, and look, that's what we try to do every year. But it is look, cold kills. Right. Cold can kill, and so making sure that we're really getting it in the hands of the needy is critical.
The only other question I have is, again, how can the federal government continue to support the energy sector as our economy continues the shift towards more clean and renewable energy resources?
Yeah, I mean, I think making sure you're open to technology, because there is some technology that is going to come into play here, making sure that you're open to all those alternatives, whether that is in the form of liquid energy, whether that's in the form of gas or electricity, is really important. Just directionally, I would never bet on one source. And I actually think one of the superpowers of the country, right, is the fact that it lets that which can have the lowest price win, taking into account the carbon footprint as well, right? And so that's an added complication today. But that's this country is in a great economic position to really move forward and to create economic growth. So, I'm very, very positive on where this country stands as it relates to energy and the economy.
Great. Eric, I can't say enough. I thoroughly enjoyed today's conversation. You and your family have truly built an incredible company, and I'm sure your grandfather is very proud, although he's probably looking down saying, don't rest on your laurels. Keep on keeping on, and but he should be very, very proud. The company is so well respected, and that doesn't happen by accident. You're good neighbors as well as good business leaders. So congratulations for all that you do. And For those of you tuning in, I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you learned as much as I did about how the energy industry is continuing to transition and adapt in the 21st century. Be sure to tune in next month when our guest will be Dr. Grace Wing, the president of Worcester Polytechnic Institute.